All right, I believe we're live on Facebook for the world to see.
Exciting.
Yeah, good stuff. How are we doing this evening, gentlemen? I know we've been having a conversation prior to this, but we'll open it up that way for everyone else's sake. Everybody doing okay? Ryan, you're coming to us from Kansas City?
Yeah, Kansas City. It's starting to feel like spring, which is exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Mark is from North Georgia, I believe. Is that where you're coming to us a lot from? Road Atlanta, basically?
That's right. Hello there, Andrew and Ryan and whoever the one or four other people who will join us here. Maybe there will be more, but yeah, my office and the, shall we say, logistics hub of Chin Track Days is in the small town called Houston, Georgia, which is right next to Brazelton as the neighboring town, and that is where Road Atlanta is located. I can hear Road Atlanta from home. So yes, you can just for practical purposes, people say, "Hey, Mark, where are you? Where's Chin Track Days?" We're just down the street from Road Atlanta, and I'm just back from Barber Motorsports Park from the weekend.
Good times.
But really pleased to join this conversation with you, Andrew, and Ryan from Lockton Motorsports, and we will see who else we can attract some interest in from Facebook land, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Or Meta, as they now call it. You know, who knows? Facebook. Yeah. So, guys, if you're on the stream, we've got 6 folks watching so far. Welcome. Hit the like button for us, or even the wow face or the love icon. Show us a little bit of love and share this to your friends. If you're a part of a track related group, you know, if all of your track buddies have a Facebook group, or you want to share it to somewhere that's relevant. These are some of the icons of the HPD industry. Mr. Mark Hicks from Chin Track Days and Ryan Staub, who knows more about track day insurance than probably anyone ever else will in the industry. So this is your opportunity to learn from 2 of the best, 2 of the pioneers of this space, and show us some love, share this broadcast, and get some more folks joining in. So we have plenty of questions and engagement this evening. My name's Andrew Rains. I'll be your host. You know me before from Apex Pro Facebook Live. Apex Pro makes motorsport data products, hardware and software devices to help aid and abet your driving habit and make you better at what you do. And I'll let the 2 of you introduce yourself. Mark, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I am very fortunate to be able to say I make a full-time living in the motorsport space, which is something some people dream of. I had that dream myself, and have layered it one day after another, 1 year after another, up to now. I'm in my 20th year running Chin Track Days, and we do sports car track events, non-competition, for owners and enthusiasts of high performance cars of every kind: Porsche, Corvette, Camaro, Mustang, and anything else you can think of that is capable of making laps for fun. You can bring your car to numerous great road course venues that we visit, and participate in Chin Track Days events to acquire advanced driver skills with some in-car coaching from our instructor team, or if you're already a very experienced driver just looking to make laps. We've got opportunities for you at most of the great racetracks in the Eastern USA, from COTA to Watkins Glen to Homestead Miami Speedway, and almost everything in between. Chin Track Days does about 60 annual track events, visiting 16 venues. And, you know, I guess if you just count the numbers, it makes us the largest track event provider in the USA. Even though we're not on the West Coast, though. It's just as far west as Texas, but we still have more events going on than anybody else. And I certainly have to emphasize, I do not do that alone. There are there is a full-time staff of 6 in our event management team. And maybe we've got viewers from Jack and Austin and Jim and Will, and also my wife Maria is part of our management team. A really great group of dedicated folks, all dedicated to the idea of making it possible for enthusiasts to make laps. That's what we do, and
Absolutely.
And Andrew was just with us this past weekend. We're
That's right.
in Andrew's home stomping ground at Barber Motorsports Park. And, we're looking forward to doing that again some more.
Absolutely. And the last event that I was at Barber for was WRL, which is where I got to hang out with Mr. Ryan Staub. So who is Ryan, other than the race car driver, obviously? Who's Ryan Staub?
Yeah, world famous race car driver in the amateur ranks. Yeah, I'm Ryan Staub. Excited to be with Mark and Andrew, 2 great guys I've got to know quite a bit over the years. Kind of short background on me. I've been involved in HPDE and autocross events really since 2002. So I've officially hit my 20-year anniversary. I used to have almost as much hair as Andrew when I started, and now it's all gone away. I guess maybe I drove too fast and it flew off. But nevertheless, it's been my passion. I somehow got in the insurance world working for Lockton. We're the largest privately held insurance brokerage firm in the world, and had to find a way to connect my passion for motorsports with this industry that I was gaining a lot of experience in. And never, one thing led to another. Changes within the insurance industry. A lot of individuals used to be covered by their streetcar auto insurance policies, covering them when they were on track, because they used to just have competition exclusions. I had a couple friends have claims that weren't covered, and one thing led to another, and Lockton Motorsports was formed. So we're the largest provider of HPDE and track day insurance for participants across the country. Do quite a bit with providing event liability insurance to organizers of events like Chin Track Days, and kind of the rest is history. Still doing HPDE events. I've been the chief instructor for a local car club to me for about 14 years now, and do some racing from time to time as well.
That's right. The important bit, a little bit of racing. All right. I see Mike Gallagher, who was at the Chin event this past weekend, has joined us. Welcome to the chat, Mike. Also saw Kim Coffey and Dan DeSalle. I know Dan has torn up the tracks with Chin all over the Southeast and Midwest. So
yeah,
welcome.
Hey, Dan.
Good folks. Eric Meyer jumped in the chat early on, said greetings from Indianapolis. We don't know that guy. Who's Eric Meyer?
Eric would probably like to tunnel in and join the chat.
I'm sure he's going to be opinionated about the topics, but I'd love to hear it. And that's what we want to hear. We're going to open up some topics for discussion, and this is meant to be interactive. So as you're watching, folks, turn your volume up and listen to what we have to say. Interrupt your coworkers if you're still at work, because it's worth everybody hearing. But we're going to talk about how to get the most out of your 2022 season and cover 3 different topics. And that's going to kind of be helping you set some goals or think about your preparations for this year that's already underway, what events you're going to go to, how you're going to improve. And then we're going to dovetail into common HPDE incidents, on-track incidents. And that's Mark obviously sees that, more than anybody, sees more track time, more track events than anyone else in this country, and is going to speak to how to avoid the most common incident that he sees on the racetrack. So that's a juicy one. Don't miss out on that part of the broadcast. Stay tuned. And then the last one is going to be a deep dive into understanding track day insurance. And that's your opportunity to ask Brian the questions that you need to know that are going to save money and protect yourself, and make sure that you can keep your car on track or get paid in the incident, in the case that you have an incident. So also really, really highly valuable stuff. But how about we, and then feel free to ask your questions as we go along, but how about we jump right in? So how will you improve for the 2021 season? You guys have any goals before we throw it to the audience here? Mark or Ryan, how are you working on your own self-improvement for 2022?
You better tackle that, Ryan, because you're still racing.
I'm kind of focused on continuing to make some improvements on my braking approach. I have a tendency and had a tendency for a lot of years to, I'd characterize it as entering most corners like they were a fast corner, not trail braking as often. I'd get a lot of rotation done relatively early, even in mid-speed and high-speed corners. So one of my biggest focuses last year, latter half of the year, and it's carried into the beginning of this season, and I think is working pretty well. That's probably my biggest one, and it's, for me, it's just a little bit of a mix of conscious attention on that phase of the turn and that phase of the braking, as well as, kind of using data from Apex Pro to make sure I'm holding myself accountable with that. So.
Right on. So the trail braking phase. So you said you were kind of committing back to power maybe too soon, breaking in a straight line back to power.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that so many of us coming up through the HPDE ranks and taking the safe approach, it's one that is hard to unprogram, deprogram, reprogram, however you want to say that. And it's one that I continue to work on, but seem to have made some improvements.
Mark, on that vein, I've been in enough Chin track days classrooms to know that from the get-go, you're teaching your drivers firm initial brake, smooth release as we enter the corner. And, I've heard Jim McGovern and Alan Kendall, some of your other, chief instructors, communicate that and translate it to novice students. I think that's a great way to start the learning curve with driving, is to put that trail braking information out there up front.
Fantastic, Andrew. So glad to hear that's made a past impression on you. But in part of the Chin Track Days classroom culture and our emphasis for leading novice drivers is really just to teach the right way once. And if you go back kind of to the roots of track day driving, early DE 80s and 90s, the mantra, the absolute boilerplate repetitive mantra was brake in a straight line, release the brake and turn in. Today, maybe it was a mistake then, but today we know that's a mistake. Why? Because when you release the brake, you change the dynamics of the vehicle and you unweight the front end. While you're on the brake, the car is, just call it leaning forward. The car is leaning forward. You got pressure on the front. Now you've got good grip up front, ready to initiate the turn in. If you brake in a straight line and release the brake, you notice when you release the brake, the front end lifts slightly. Well, that's unweighting. And then turn in, you got a couple of bad things going on with the car. And it reduces, certainly it reduces grip. But then later in a track day driver's kind of learning curve, whether it's 10 events down the road or a year or 20 events, eventually an expert or other advanced coach is going to come along and start talking about trail braking. And that driver, if you have gone down the path to brake in a straight line, release, and then turn in, now you have a bad habit that you have to unlearn. Ryan just alluded to this, but it's hard to break that cycle. So we want to begin at the beginning, recognizing that one of the keys to good turn in, approaching the corner, is to have pressure on the nose. You want the car leaning forward as you initiate the turn in for best vehicle dynamics. But then, of course, a very gradual release of the brake, and depending on the corner, the track, how fast you're going, that may be a rapid or longer, okay, you got to tailor it to the corner. But if you release the brake pedal gradually, you're not going to get that front end lift. And that's what we're all trying to avoid, are the sudden changes in vehicle dynamics. I hope most of our viewers or people on the other side of the conversation are familiar with a traction circle, and keeping that marble in the circle instead of letting it fling across as you rapidly change vehicle dynamics, that is always undesirable, whether it's under braking or power or wheel inputs. Anytime you're slinging that marble from side to side, it's usually undesirable. And that's why we want to always talk about, from the beginning of day one novice, we want to talk about smooth, gradual inputs, whether it's on the throttle or the brake or the wheel. And that absolutely pairs and meshes with the practice of trail braking. So that is not, it's an advanced technique to be a trail braking superstar, without a doubt, but it is a basic beginner technique. We want drivers to learn trail braking from day one.
Absolutely. I think that's the next Marvel movie, is Trail Braking Superstar. Is that the next superhero? Yeah, that might not be an interesting one.
Instead of the big S.
Mark, are you going to be the character, and what is your mask going to look like?
It's going to be the picture of him blowing the conch shell, right? That's going to be
right. It'll be a foam conch head with some eye holes.
Awesome. Marco Sue jumped on here, and Marco said he's trying out an HPDE with Chin for the first time next weekend at NCM. So Marco is going to be at the Chin event. Right on, Marco. He's got a 2000 Dodge Viper as well. Very sensitive to weight transfer, like Mark's describing.
A lovely vintage car. We love classic cars.
Absolutely, and a Viper to boot. That's an awesome ride. He said he's had quite a mix of instructor direction on brake release and turn-in as well. Marco, hopefully a little bit of the mystics there and kind of the magic gets unveiled in the Chin classroom session. I'm sure it will. There's a lot of fundamentals with driving, and a lot of people have different ways of getting to those fundamentals. But at the end of the day, what Mark said about the friction circle, certainly if you're using the Apex Pro app or using our device, it's very easy to go look at some tools to see if your transitions between turning and braking, steering, all of your inputs are too abrupt or not. And Ryan could have diagnosed some of that kind of ailment with not trail braking in the slower corners through some basic metrics and data. We have tons and tons of content about how to do that. But that's awesome. I bet you'll have a great experience. And Mark, your point on the smooth inputs and adjusting the balance in the car the way you want, that'll probably come back up in our second topic about avoiding incidents on the track. But that's big for either of you guys. This is something I was curious to know if anyone watching is going to go to a new track this year, because Chin's got an extensive list of events and different tracks that they go to. And Mark was talking about a track that I'd never heard of, Eagles Canyon Raceway. I've heard of it, but I've never known anything about it, and was saying that it's an awesome lap. But I was curious to know, Mark and Ryan, are either of y'all going to any new tracks that are new to you this year? Or are there any tracks, Mark, that we need to be aware of on your schedule, like Eagles Canyon, that are worth going to? We have Peter Krause on there with us as well. Hey, Peter.
I'll let Mark expand on this, but I think we're both going to a new track at the same time. Because I'm gonna, not sure if you remember, Mark, but we're gonna be meeting up in that mid-May, I want to say.
It's this, you're talking about Ozarks International Raceway. Of course, this is the new track that's getting the buzz right now among the enthusiast community, because there is quite a giant size development that has gone into Ozarks International Raceway, located outside of Gravois Mills. Look it up, Gravois Mills, Missouri, just north of Lake of the Ozarks. But Ryan, maybe you've seen the site. Have you been there? Because Ryan is in Kansas City.
Yeah, I've driven by early in the construction phase, but schedule has not worked out for me to attend an event there yet. So my first time there will be at the Chin Track Days event, and if I'm not mistaken, it's mid-May, correct?
Yes, second weekend of May. Yeah. That is right, May 10, 11. And in fact, online registration is available right now on the Chin Track Days website. We are taking entries for the first Chin event at Ozarks International Raceway. And I think Ozarks is hot this weekend with SRO World Challenge. They're going to break in the track, and we're going to get our swing at it here 4 weekends from now. Already got almost 100 drivers signed up, but Ozarks is a pretty large scale facility, so there is room for more. Openings are still available. So Ryan, we're going to get to see this exciting new track for the first time all at once. I also have not made a site visit, but I've been in contact with the owners and developers, obviously extensively in the background here, and I'm really looking forward to it. Early reports are that this track presents lots of driver challenge, technical difficulty, elevation change, and of course it's a long lap, 19 turns on 3.9 miles. Actually, I've got
serious. I just posted the link to the Chin schedule as well. So for those of you who are thinking right now, you're maybe postulating on that topic of attending a new track. It's a big word I learned this week. You can look at the Chin Track Days schedule and sift through and see what events suit your fancy. But that sounds like a great opportunity. And Peter Kraus jumped in and said, going to a new track is a great way to get yourself out of a rut and learn a new skill. And I could not emphasize that more. He also said it requires personal responsibility. I think Ozarks is it's definitely the type of track that discretion is the better part of valor, but it looks absolutely fantastic. And Sean Yoder came in with a topic on our conversation about the next Marvel movie and said, Captain Transfer and Balance Boy. So those are our
Love it.
Our trail-breaking themed superhero.
We'll have to give that proper attribution when we find the chance to use it.
That's right. When the cartoon comes out, or the Marvel movie. We'll sell it to Disney. They're buying everything these
Captain
days.
Transfer.
Jason Smith is downloading Apex Pro now. Awesome, Jason. Check it out. That's great. Ryan Stiles just joined. That's not Ryan Stiles from Whose Line Is It Anyway? Is it the stand-up comedian? I don't think it is. Matt Brook has a brand new Apex Pro. I appreciate the love, guys. Jacob Wilson's watching. Awesome, great discussion. And Dan DeSalle says there's plenty of opportunity for Marco to learn with 23 turns at NCM. NCM, that's probably not too dissimilar from Ozarks from a learning standpoint, where there's so many elements to that racetrack. Most of the time you're just trying to, your first 5 laps, you're just trying to remember where you are. I'm sure y'all will both have that experience at Ozarks, just making sure that, is this the right-hander or the left-hander?
Yeah, because I don't think you can even find any real reliable track video of the lap yet. There will be after this weekend, because we see World Challenge coming up. Obviously, that's going to get televised, and everybody will have in-car. And so we'll all finally have something that we'll be able to sink our teeth into, at least as far as getting acquainted with that. But, we're talking about, collectively, we've all been to, 100+ racetracks. And now we're excited because there's a new racetrack opening that we haven't been to. But I think for many of the participants in our conversation, the viewers on this stream, there are numerous tracks that they've got access to that they have not yet been to, right? It's rare, I think, for the hobby enthusiast to, if we encounter someone who's been to, say, 10 or 12 tracks, would be a lot. So if you're a hobby enthusiast out there and you've done 1 or 2 track events, maybe at your nearby track, whatever is local to you, or maybe you've been to 2 or 3 different tracks over the past year or 2 years of track day driving, you want to make the effort, because every new track you visit challenges you in a way that you haven't been challenged before, and you're going to acquire new skills. It really is one of the ways to expand your horizon as an advanced driver, to visit a new track and master the technical difficulty that any new lap presents makes you a better driver. So it's part of the long learning curve for
Absolutely.
enjoying the track hobby.
Absolutely. That long learning curve, it's important to go into this, especially, Marco, who's talking about doing one of his first events, acknowledging that there's a long learning curve right up front is a really big, important part of this. And that this is something that you're going to want to invest a lot of time and effort and resources into learning, because it's a worthwhile task to pursue. Peter just commented and said, Peter Krause is going to try to find the video. He said that Jesse Prather posted a great video about Ozarks this past week or something recently. So he's going to find a link and post that. So we have some resources there, but maybe that dovetails us into the second topic, which is a juicy and a fun one. But I'm excited to hear from Mark on this. Common HPDE incidents, dropping 2 to 4 wheels at the corner exit. Mark, will you tell us what you see happen, in these incidents at your events, and how you can prevent that, maybe for someone watching?
I think that thanks, Andrew. That is a great topic. And it's also something that will tie together with what our comrade Ryan Staub has to offer about the risk management and the common problems, and as we participate in the track hobby as drivers, all of us, we know that making great laps and enjoying your high performance car is enormously gratifying. But if you're out making laps, there certainly is an element of risk there. It's actually part of what makes the track hobby exciting, no doubt. But the reality ultimately is, if mistakes can occur and there can be consequences. So, sometimes it's random. A bird flies into your path and breaks the windshield, or a car ahead of you may have a mechanical problem that is unanticipated that results in something bad happening. But let's really be honest and confront the truth that most incidents that occur on track are unforced driver errors. Okay, remember, as we talk about in this conversation, track day driving, that's non-competition. You're not going to get forced off the track by another driver. You're not going to get the corner taken away from you by another driver that's overtaking. We're talking about individual drivers in their own cars making unforced driver errors that lead to consequences. Over the arc of time, you begin to recognize that some of these occurrences are copy, paste, replay. In fact, they even happen in the same places on the same tracks, and you just change the color of the car. It's kind of comical and also kind of unfortunate. What is that error? What is it? It is rushing the corner. Early turn in. Wherever you are on any racetrack, a slow corner, a fast corner, a tight corner, a sweeping corner, if you initiate the turn too soon, how many of you out there know what will happen? Many of you do, and that is the corner will end before you are ready for it to end. If you initiate the corner too soon, you will run out of exits. The track out point for that corner comes up and you're not ready for it, and you leave the track. Wheels off. Sometimes that's recoverable. You're in the grass. You can calmly hold your hand steady, stabilize the car, and bring it back onto the surface. Or in some places, the grass may be very slick. The wall may be very close, or you may not have fast enough hands to get that save done. Smack. Driver, you are in the wall. And it happened because you rushed the corner. You turned in before the corner, before the proper turn-in point. And that is this critical element of patience that is an absolute core skill in being an advanced driver, and going fast. requires patience. Seems almost like a contradiction, but most of the errors that occur are in some way, shape, or form related to having a lack of patience by the driver. And the number one error that we see commonly recurring is early turn-in leading to an early exit and off the track. So the thing that I would emphasize for drivers over and over as part of your risk management and taking care of your valuable assets on the track is don't rush the corner. And that'll generate some discussion and some questions, but I'm going to add one more point behind this. A second common error we see is the driver, well, it's also related to rushing, and that is the driver who insists on becoming a solo driver when they're not ready. Oh, I just did this lap on iRacing last week. It's very fresh for me. I should be a solo driver. Never turned a wheel on the lap in their life. Nuh-uh. Drivers don't rush to become a solo driver. The track day space, not just Chin Track Days, not just the event that I would like for you to attend, but any event you go to, there will be experienced instructors present that know a great deal more about track driving than you do. That's how those guys got to be instructors, guys and ladies. And they've got a great deal to offer. And if you are a driver with 1 or 2 or 3 days and you think on track and you think you're ready to become a solo driver, you probably are a good candidate to continue to work with an instructor because they're going to shorten that learning curve. If you become a solo driver at day 2 or day 3, it's going to take you a long time, the next 10 days to climb this curve. But if you keep an instructor in your right seat, you're going to get this curve. And you're going to be a much better driver by day 6 than with a coach or an instructor in the right seat than you would be as a solo driver on day 10 or day 15. So don't rush to get to be a solo driver, and don't rush the corner. Because if you rush the corner, you're going to end up going off, and then you're going to wish you had track insurance. And that's where our colleague Ryan Staub comes along. Ryan was right, and Lockton was one of the pioneers for offering coverage for cars on course. Right, Ryan, when did y'all start doing that in Lockton Motorsports?
Back in 2008. So yeah, a little over 14 years ago now.
How does that work, Ryan? How, I'm like, oh, I've got a nice Corvette or Porsche or any of the other great cars that are fun to use at the track today. And I think to myself, is my streetcar policy covering me? I'm not sure. What do I need to do?
Yeah. So, track day insurance these days is pretty easy to obtain. It's all typically done on websites. We were the very first one to offer insurance online, and we kind of pride ourselves that we've designed the website in a way that most people can buy a policy in less than 5 minutes. But it's pretty basic details to actually obtain insurance. You just need to know the dates of the event that you're going to, of course, which track and who the event organizer is. We take the approach, and some of our competition does, some don't, but we very much take the approach that the event organizer that puts on the event, i.e. Chin Track Days, is ultimately what's going to influence it being a good risk or not, to where we don't run your driver's license history to see if you've had a whole bunch of speeding tickets, because at the end of the day, we feel Mark and his crew are going to do a lot better job keeping you safe on the track than potentially if you had 5 speeding tickets that you'd be a bad risk. So that's really what qualifies an individual for being able to attend an event. That an event organizer is approved by us, and then past that, it's put in year, make, model, VIN of the vehicle, and then a value. And we'll talk a little bit about what to think about when you're choosing a value for your car. But literally takes about 5 minutes to buy a policy.
What is it that if I'm a driver and I've got, it's really easy to be into $75,000. I'm going to say I've got a $75,000 high performance car. That's a pretty easy price point to get to today.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I need track day insurance or not. What's my decision making
Yeah, good question.
How do I know? God, what is that? That's going to cost me what, $300-400 for the weekend? Is that worthwhile? Wow, the track event sounds really expensive.
Yeah, it's a tough one. There's no one answer for everyone, but first I'd say you can review your insurance policy to make sure that you aren't covered or confirm that you are covered. I'll tell you, 99.9% of insurance policies have some sort of exclusion that takes away coverage while you're on track. So then you're left with ultimately two different choices. One being get some sort of HPD insurance, track day insurance, or choose to self-insure. And I'll go back to, Mark talking about incidents. I've reviewed well over 1,000 incident reports over the last 14 years from claimants that we've had that have bought insurance from us and needed to make a claim. And, so often people ask me like, or they say, I've been doing events for so long, I'm not going to have one. And then they start asking questions about, causes of incidents. Mark hit the nail on the head with the 2 or the 4-wheel off leading to a loop to hit the inside of the corner. I'd characterize it like this: about 5% of claims that we see overall are outside of the driver's control. Fluid on the track, mechanical breakdown of something on the car that breaks, that causes a loss of control, and they hit the wall. The other 95% I would classify as running out of talent, or unforced error is the nicer way that Mark said it. But I think folks need to recognize that it's a safe sport with good instruction, with drivers driving within their limits. Incidents aren't terribly frequent, but they do happen. And then you've got to plan for, do I have, in that case, a $75,000 sitting in my bank account that I am ready to, buy a replacement car? Should I, put the car on the wall and hit it the wrong way? Or do I buy insurance? And I tend to think of it that if I could do fewer events, but make sure that I'm not as financially difficult of a situation should I hit a wall, I'd be better off that way. And kind of the impetus to me putting this whole insurance program together 14 years ago was seeing some of my friends that had incidents that were not covered by their insurance policy, that were not going to participate in the sport anymore. And I mean, that was the driving factor behind me at 27, 28 years old, putting this whole insurance program together, was, finding a way to, let that person that has that, worst case situation occur still have the funds to be able to keep participating in the sport.
Yeah, got a great question here from Peter Kraus, and that's super interesting. 5% of the claims that you see are from things outside of the driver's control, and all of the rest are driver errors, or I'm sure that's mixed with lots of different things in multi-car, but that's fascinating. That's really good information. Puts it in perspective. Peter asked, Ryan, would you say the claims have increased since early 2020? Because it seems that way from out here.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough to determine for sure, because we do see increases and decreases from year to year. I would say early in 2020 that there was a whole lot of excitement of, ooh, we can get back out on the track, A, and B, a lot of organizations learning how to do lead follow for the first time, not having a ton of experience doing it, and therefore having some growing pains trying to implement that. We saw frequency go up a little bit. I do think it evened out. The latter part of 2020 and 2021 seemed to be a little bit more on track. The more concerning thing to me that we're keeping an eye on is just technology and exotic parts on cars have come so far, as well as cost of everything is going up to where the average claim cost is going up pretty significantly. Just so many more cars that are participating in events that have all kinds of sensors behind bumpers, that have carbon fiber bits that are more expensive. It's just more
a door
expensive
ding
to
or
fix a car.
Yeah. A bump draft bump could be a $3,000 bill with a sensor as opposed to a plastic part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then if the claim rate escalates, then naturally the premium's going to follow that, huh, Ryan?
Yeah. Eventually there's, one of two things that has to change, because while we do our best to manage it, we are not the insurance company. We are managing an insurance program for the insurance company. They're not in business to lose money. I know no one's going to lose any sleep over an insurance company losing money, but they will not keep doing it if they consistently lose money. So you got to do one of two things: either deductibles start to go up, and I think we, as well as pretty much everyone else out there, are kind of at the limit for most individuals. It's 10 to 15% deductible is kind of the industry average. I don't think there's much more that most participants are willing to take on to where it's either deductibles increase or premiums increase. And I see it likely in the next couple of years that we'll start to see them start to creep up a little bit.
Ryan, sorry, Mark, got a couple of track insurance related questions. And the second one's mine. The first one is from Michael James. He's wondering if you could tell us how many dollars in checks you have written for wrecked cars.
Ooh, that's a tough
good
one.
question.
I haven't looked at the numbers in a while, but I do know before we hit our 10-year mark, we had paid $10 million in claims. And we're at 14 years now, and we've been growing. Like the first, 3 or 4 years of the insurance operation were significantly smaller than 9 through 14. So it's well over $10 million. But I don't keep a running tally on that, because it might hurt a little bit to look at that number.
That's fascinating information. Yeah. Mark, did you have something? I've got another question about insurance, if not.
Well, a follow-up and it's on the topic that Peter Krause originally raised, but that Ryan, in 22, could you even guesstimate to quantify the ratio of claims to policies written? That is, compared to prior years, is that claim rate going up?
Well, if I look at it right now, I'll tell you, and I haven't looked at it for 2022 overall from a ratio perspective yet. It's a little bit premature to do that, but I'll tell you one thing. This will go back to what Mark was talking about earlier, kind of how to avoid incidents. I will guarantee you, if I looked at the numbers for January through April 18th and looked at that ratio compared to all of 2021 or all of 2022, I guarantee the incident ratio is higher right now, because every single year at the beginning of the year, people are excited to get back out on track. They try to pick up where they left off. They overdrive and have a higher frequency of incidents. And the same thing tends to happen at the end of the season, whether it's people chasing personal bests or trying to make just an amazing session at the end of their last event, incident ratios tend to be dramatically higher beginning of season and the end of season. So I didn't answer your question, but hopefully it's a helpful little tidbit there.
Got a good one from the one and only Eric Meyer. Eric throwing out some good questions. Ryan, any data on claims that originate on a wet track surface versus dry?
It's been a while since we've done the numbers on this. In the early days, did a whole lot more of this, so we kind of figured out what were the key drivers of incidents and how could we try to have an impact on that. I'd say not really. The one issue that we run into is when we don't have incidents at a particular event, we don't always have that indication that there were what the weather conditions were there. We tend to only see it on the back end of, we get a claim that comes in and then we get all the details of that particular claim. So the data is a little bit flawed, but given expectations for wet weather at events, it's never really stuck out that it's higher at events with rainy conditions, damp conditions, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I would just quickly add to that, and it's not empirical data, just my seat of the pants. I see an incident rate go down when it's wet. Drivers, well, when it's dry, a proficient driver will certainly tend to push their limits, and they're driving the car out at 9/10 or better. If it's wet, they back way off 5 or 6/10, and we often see a lower incident rate at. Let me use Road Atlanta as a quick example, because Road Atlanta, let's all be candid, it has a high incident rate as a venue. Doesn't matter who's there, whether it's racing or track day or chin track days or
Brutal
any
track.
other provider. Incidents occur at Road Atlanta. When it's wet, there are far fewer, and but that is, it's not like I've kept a list and I can say I've got a database of the wet versus dry statistics. I don't. That's nothing but seat of the pants observation over the years.
Fascinating, man. We have a lot of questions about insurance, Ryan. We might have to do a follow-up Facebook Live with the fully focused on insurance. I'm not sure if this is one that you're comfortable answering publicly, but Marco is wondering if some organizations have a noticeably lower insurance frequency than others, which I think you kind of indicated that that is the case earlier. Like based on the data, are some groups safer to run with?
So I'll answer that question. I won't go a step further of naming
Chin
names.
track days. Put that up. Chin track days is pretty safe.
So there definitely is a difference from event organizer to event organizer, and I can definitely proudly say that Chin Track Days is for years consistently been one of the better performers. To pick out something that I'm sure will pop up that I will actually share is what you might expect, and Mark kind of alluded to earlier. There are tracks that tend to have higher incident ratios than others. And the funny part of it is, I think it's when you look at the bucket list tracks for most folks, whether they realize it or not, it's the danger, the thrill, the speed of certain tracks that attracts them to those. So, some of the worst performers from an incident ratio perspective, this doesn't mean injuries, anything along those lines, would be, Watkins Glen, VIR, Road Atlanta, Sebring, tracks like this where, they tend to have high speed, they tend to have high consequences and or not be very forgiving. And I think that's largely what, whether we consciously or unconsciously are attracted to it, I think that's what a lot of us are excited about in this sport. So.
Yeah, the thrill of the chase, mastering the lap at the high risk venue. Certainly, my first real track time was at Road Atlanta, and I kind of, Mark, I'm not sure if you feel this way because it's your home track, but I kind of early on didn't really recognize the dangers of that racetrack because it felt so comfortable and felt like home. And I only really learned later on that it had a reputation for that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and kind of respect those tracks, but also have the approach and the ability to kind of be able to attack it and focus on staying on the gray stuff. That's the only way to go fast.
Yeah, your tires have to be in contact with the asphalt to go fast. When you're in the air, you're not going fast. When you're in the grass, you're not going fast. It may seem like it.
It feels fast.
But then suddenly you won't be. That of course is the problem that we all want to avoid.
That's right. Mark, we had a comment from a familiar face, Scotty Elkins, who is the one and only trackside photographer for Chin Track Days at Barber Motorsports Park and other venues. And Scotty's wondering what car gets written off. So what kind of cars, is there any correlation with vehicle type and claims?
Yeah, I can't pick one. I'll throw a couple that have popped up over the years. We've definitely not always had the best luck with Cayman GT4s. I've had a fair amount of those in recent years. Elises and Exige. We've had some challenges with those. I mean, there are just some cars where you get enough chassis damage, even though it's not that bad of a hit. The cost to repair takes it too high, and I'll pick on Lotus as an example, just the front end. And I'm not that much of a Lotus expert. Mark is way more than I am, but you've got that whole front clamshell that you hit it on one specific corner of it, and the amount of damage to the car is, or replacing that clamshell overall is just so expensive that it drives up the cost pretty significantly. So those are a couple that come into mind, but a lot of it's just cars that we see a ton of. There's a ton of E46 M3s that participate in track day events. We see a lot of those, and especially while values are actually going up right now. If you would ask me 2-3 years ago, a lot more of those were totaled when they were going for $15,000. It doesn't take much damage to total that car out. So
different market now, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, just same as what Ryan comments there, but that I think it's really related to the frequency of the cars themselves. Okay, so Porsche, give Porsche the credit they deserve. More Porsches participating in any track day anywhere you go, unless it's a private, the Lotus Club Day or the Corvette Club Day. But if it's the population of enthusiast cars, the general that participate in track days events, there's more Porsches than any others. Therefore, you're going to see a higher incident rate, or more Porsches will be involved in incidents simply because there are more Porsches present, not because there is a problem with the mark. But Ryan has probably hit the nail on the head, though, just with regard to certain expense related to some cars where, that's what is the difference between, or how is a Miata and a Ferrari different? Well, you can't do $10,000 damage to either one, right? So, so the point there is that it's real easy to do $40,000 damage to a Ferrari or a GT3. But doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with the car, or that you should choose another car because you're inherently going to do damage to the car. Not at all. It's really down to the driver. It's down to the driver. Drivers make cars go fast, and drivers make mistakes that end up resulting in something going wrong.
Yeah, I think the last car that I recall being especially problematic, none of the cars that I mentioned do I think there's an inherent issue with the car. I'd have to go back a ways when 996.1 GT3s, the 04 and 05 were the only ones with no traction, no stability control, and drivers loved them and they were sought after because they were the only one without the nannies. But that was one that for a good number of years we saw a disproportionately high number of incidents with those cars. And I truly think that was due to the car being less forgiving. When I talk about GT4s, it amazes me. When I started doing events in 2002, an instructor run group was primarily composed of E36 M3s, 944 turbos were like the go-to cars for instructors. And now I go to most events and seems like it's just a big line of GT3s, and they all gravitate toward Porsches, all GT3s and GT4s, it seems like these days. So.
Yeah, very high volume of those cars.
Absolutely. It's absolutely awesome where we are today. And while you see a lot of GT3, GT4, yeah, they're spectacular and fast. Look at what Camaros and Mustangs are capable of today. The new C8s, just the level of technology and performance that is now accessible to enthusiasts today compared to 20 years ago is we are in the golden age of automotive performance. It is the second decade of the 20th century. And it's just a fantastic time to, you can get a Camaro SS today. I'm not a Chevy pimp, but it's a great example. There's a $60,000 car with proper tires, well driven. You can go out to Road Atlanta and go a minute 35 without doing anything to the car but filling the tank and checking air pressure. 20 years ago, to go a minute 35 at Road Atlanta, you would need to spend $200,000.
Yep, absolutely. That's
amazing.
That's no better way to put it in a great summary as well. From that, I was really shocked. There's a lot of good track insurance questions. I mean, Ryan, something that stood out to me kind of in summary, and we've got 5 minutes until the top of the hour here, so we'll wrap it up. But there's another conversation to be had about nannies and their interaction. We actually had some conversation in our prep about how nannies interact with both the common incident that Mark mentioned and also track day insurance claims. And there are some things from my perspective as a driving coach that it's very, very good for you as a driver to know. And I know that Jason Smith mentioned that his Corvette Grand Sport helps me a lot as long as he leaves the system on and doesn't turn off the nannies. Might be worth doing a follow-up conversation about what do the nannies do? What are how are they actually interacting with the car, and what do you need to understand about them to get the most out of the car, but also know when they're intervening. But Ryan, my takeaway there is if you do have one of those cars like a Cayman GT4, and I've heard a lot about GT4 Club Sports being fairly easy to write off, or a car maybe like an Alpha 4C that's a monocoque car or a McLaren, it might be very prudent to consider track day insurance as an absolute must, because it's a little easier if you do have a minor incident to write the car off. Whereas you mentioned E46 M3s, those cars are really tough. It takes you can hit stuff with the front of an E46 several times before you have an issue. And cars but that's something to be intelligent about how you purchase your track day insurance. And I think it's great to know that Chin is one of the lower incident rate groups out there.
Great points.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say great points there, Andrew. But so we didn't touch on this at the beginning of this broadcast, but I kind of feel like Andrew, we race together sometimes, and he races in an E46 M3, and we had some side-by-side action at Barber last time we raced together. Was this like a subtle, you're just letting me know how tough the E46 is, that I better watch out next time you're
I get a little tap.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Point taken.
Right.
You haven't seen under the bumper body work, have you, Ryan? I mean, he's got those full-on trucker bull bars.
What's funny about that is that it actually does have a bash bar under the that's funny. That's a whole nother conversation, but yeah, we had a great time, man. It was frustrating. Our car had that issue where it got hot and we lost horsepower, which is my excuse, but also the truth. And we didn't really get to race together because you blew past me. Next time. Yep. Yeah, maybe. Will you be at Road Atlanta in July in Mark's backyard?
I think I will be at Road Atlanta. So.
Awesome. We got one more question. I want to throw it out there to Mike Gallagher, because Mark, he was at your event this past weekend at Barber, and then we'll wrap it up in time for 6 o'clock here. But he says, Ryan, can you weigh in on dedicated track cars, i.e. E36, that are not registered on the street and insuring it for track use? So Mike has a freshly built E36 track car. Do you have any parting words for somebody that's building a non-street car track car and how they may interact with insurance?
Yeah, I can't speak for everyone else. I know some of our competition don't like to insure vehicles that aren't licensed for street use. It's always been something we've been very accommodating of. Something I didn't touch on that I should have, and it's very applicable for Michael here, is really spend some time, especially if you did a build of your car, taking into consideration all the parts you've thrown at it. You might want to hide that from your significant other as you're, compiling that total, but make sure you're insuring for an appropriate amount. For us, it's not going to be any issue that the vehicle is not licensed for street use. Just make sure to think about, all those costs, what it would take to truly replace the car should something bad happen.
And you call that declared value, right, Ryan?
Declared or agreed value is the term, and definitely make sure that you're buying an insurance policy like that, because it's very worded in the favor of the customer should there ever be a dispute with a claim.
Excellent.
Great advice. Well, gents, this was awesome. What parting words do you have? What do people need to know, and how can they follow you? We posted some links to both the Lockton FAQs. I'm going to drop your high performance drivers education first timer guide, Ryan. This is a link to an online resource that Ryan developed with Ross Bentley for first time HPDE drivers. So for those of you who are new to the sport and getting into it, make sure to check this out. Thanks very much for being here. What do you guys have to say for the world before we leave?
I'll just remind drivers, while you're making laps, don't rush it. When you're registering online for Chin Track Days events, rush to register. We're at NCM Motorsports Park next weekend, 2 weekends from now. We're at COTA and Watkins Glen 3 weekends from, COTA and geez, my calendar. COTA in New Jersey. And after that, then Watkins Glen. After that, Ozarks International Raceway, second weekend in May, 4 weeks out from now. Tons more to come on track with Chin Track Days throughout 22. Thank you for your support, and thank you, Andrew and Ryan. Really enjoyed our conversation together.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate everyone joining us today. You'll see, I think, my Facebook page through this video that we've got here. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Shoot me a Facebook message. Happy to answer questions, or LocktonMotorsports.com if you've got questions about our insurance products. I've got a great team, as well as I answer some of those emails that come in. Hope everyone has a great season. Find ways to improve your driving. Find ways to focus on safety at the track. And if there's anything we can do to help with your insurance needs, happy to do so. So have a great season.
Awesome. Look through the comments there. There's several links to Chin Track Day schedule, the Chin newsletter. Definitely check those two resources out for track events, and then Ryan's FAQ page for track insurance, as well as the First Timers Guide. Great resources to get started for this year. Make sure you download the Apex Pro app to time lapse at your next event and look at some data. You can use it for free without the Apex Pro hardware, or you can invest a little bit of money, about $500, and get the hardware device for better accuracy and improved data. Gents, thank you very much. This was a ton of fun. Ryan, I can't wait to go nose to tail on the racetrack again soon, because I'll be at Road Atlanta as well. And maybe we can talk Mark into coming out to cheer us on if he's in town that weekend, but he'll probably be running an event.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for hosting on Apex
Absolutely.
Pro.
See you later, Facebook.